Hey guys, this is Maple Notchman, and today I'm going to show you how I build and design ships in Coriolis. The reason I like to use Coriolis is because I can build the ship on here first and see if I'm going to have enough power to run certain weapons or what the DPS is going to be, and things like that. It also is a really good layout to see your hull values and your actual shield values, and things like that. So let me kind of walk you through how I build ships. So to start out with, we've got a build. It's a Crate Mark II PvP generic build. You can also do this with exploration ships and things like that. So let's kind of dig in here. So the first thing that I like to look at is the core internals. And you start out with your armor selection. So the type of armor that you go with is going to vary depending on the type of ship that you're building. Like for example, if I'm building an exploration ship, then I'm probably going to leave the lightweight alloy on it. And what's nice about that is that it has no weight penalty. So even if you throw heavy duty deep plating on it, engineering, then it's not going to add any weight because the weight is 0 anyways. So in essence, it basically will give you free hit points. Whereas as you start going into these better armors, they'll have more weight. And something to keep in mind is that reinforced will give you more hull than lightweight. Military grade will give you even more hull, but military grade, mirrored surface, and reactive surface all have the same amount of hull that they'll give you. The difference is the resists. And so keep that in mind. And pretty much on a combat ship for the armor, I always do heavy duty deep plating. Unless it is a very fast ship and for some reason I want to run reactive and I put like lightweight on it to make it lighter. That's only an exception. Typically heavy duty deep plating. Now some people might go, oh, what about thermal resist and all this stuff? Trust me, if you actually look at the hit point numbers here of what you're going to get out of your hull, you want heavy duty deep plating. Okay, moving on. So the power plant I'll typically save for last, because you can put different size power plants and different grades, A through E. And so depending how much power you need. Also, there's a couple different engineering options, whether you go armored or you go overcharged. Overcharged gives you more power at the cost of integrity and thermal efficiency, whereas armored will actually increase your thermal efficiency and give you a little bit of power, but it is at the cost of weight, so it's kind of a balance. That's a beautiful thing about engineering in this game. And anytime you're looking at a build, by the way, to see the engineering that somebody's put on it, just hover over the little lug nut here. See how it says Armored Grade 5 Thermal Spread. So thermal spread is the experimental effect. So a lot of modules, you can put the blueprint on them, which in this case is Armored Grade 5, and then you can put an experimental effect. Okay? Same thing with like the thrusters, dirty grade 5, drag drives. Yeah, so keep in mind, depending if you're doing an exploration ship, you don't need the biggest possible power plant in it, okay? You want something, because it's heavy, like this is 48 tons. If you go with something smaller, it's going to be lighter, you're going to jump farther. Same thing in a trade vessel, you may not need a big power plant. So keep that in mind. Like I said, I usually do my power plant last. Thrusters are completely dependent on what you're going to use the ship for. So if you're going to do combat, you pretty much always get the biggest size A thrusters you can fit on it. Dirty drives gives you the most boost. There's also some other options that you can look into, like clean drives, which has more thermal efficiency but not quite as much performance. Another option here is if you're making an exploration ship, you might consider using the D-grade module. And so what I mean by that is the modules they have size and they also have grades. And typically an E is what comes on your ship, and that's the worst. Ds are lightweight. Cs are kind of mediocre. They're the same weight as the Es and the same weight as the As. Bs are armored, so they're usually heavier, and they'll have more integrity, but they'll have pretty good performance as well. And then As are your most optimal performance. Usually the weight is the same as the C and the E. The cost on the As is usually extremely high, so they're usually the most expensive. So keep that in mind about the sizes and the grades of the modules. Another thing to consider, your jump range, you're pretty much always going to run an A, and how you engineer that is usually going to be increased range with Mass Manager. There are some cases where people like to run fast boot because it's a dedicated PvP ship or something. Great. Also in the size 5, keep in mind you can go to Human Tech Broker and buy the double engineered size 5 frameshift drive, which is awesome. So if you're doing anything with a size 5, I recommend doing that instead of actually engineering one. Life support is the same way. You got grades A through E, E being the worst, D being the lightest, and A being the most optimal. Keep in mind that the more life support you get, the more power it uses. Sometimes that can be an issue. And quite frankly, on a lot of ships, you don't need anything more than a D because you're not going to get your canopy shot out. Or if you do, like even with a D, you're going to have 7.5 minutes to go get it fixed. You can also put things like shielded or reinforced on it, which will add some more integrity if you're worried about that. So that can be pretty useful. Power distributor. In a combat ship, you pretty much always want the biggest, most badass power distributor you can put in it. But if you're in a exploration ship, pretty much you're going to look for the smallest one that you can run and still be able to boost. Up here, see how it has your boost interval. That's just basically saying with this many pips and engines, how quickly you'll recharge enough to boost again. So you can, go with a smaller, if you're doing the exploration ship, you can go with a smaller distributor that's way lighter, uses way less power, and you'll still be able to boost. You could even go, like, I could probably do this 2D and then throw, like, engine-focused engineering on it and maybe make it boost. Before you actually do it, try it out in the build first. That's why you build it on Coriolis, to see what you can do. And it'll tell you what that boost interval time is, and if it's too long, then maybe go up a little bit in size. Sensors, also same thing as life support, A through E. Ds are the lightest. The higher up you go, the heavier they are and the more power they use. Now keep in mind, depending what you have on your ship and what the build is, you may be able to go with A's. And like on this ship, 80 tons really isn't that big a deal. It doesn't change your speed that much. And the nice thing about running A's, especially if you put long range on them, if you're bounty hunting or red teaming, murdering ships and things like that, then having that expanded scan capability is really, really nice. There's other options as well here. You could go, a lot of combat ships, people go with D-grade sensors and then put long range on them. If you're in a jumping ship, then you might go D-grade and then go lightweight to get even more jump range. So there's a variety of options. It's up to you what you want to do with your ship. But for things like bounty hunting, if you want to be able to scan clear across the HAZ-RES or the nav beacon, then A grade with long range is the way to go. Moving on. So that's kind of the core internals. The next category over here are the optional internals. And this is where you're going to put your shield generator, your hull reinforcements, things like that. So, depending on what you're using the ship for, you may want the biggest possible shield that you can fit. This is a size 6. Or you might want the smallest possible shield. So depending on the size of your ship, you might be able to run a size 3 shield or a size 4 shield. And that's something you can figure out when you see what modules are available. And so if you're on an exploration ship, you probably want to run a smaller shield. If you're in a cargo trader, then maybe you kind of want to run a medium-sized shield. You don't want to use your biggest bays for shields because you're going to lose a lot of cargo that way. But you don't want to run your smallest shield, especially if you're playing in open, or else you might get blasted. So, those are things to consider. For shields, there's 3 basic types of shields. You have your regular grade shields, A through E, and they follow kind of the same idea as the modules, A being kind of the optimal one and D being the lightest. And then you have these things that are called biweaves, and biweaves are basically a lightweight shield that recharges really fast, and that can be really good for certain types of ships. And then you have prismatics, which you get by pledging to the prismatic princess. They're really heavy. They don't have hardly any recharge, but they're the most powerful in the game. Okay. For this crate hybrid build, we're not going to use a prismatic. We're going to use a biweave. And then for engineering, unless you're a really small ship that you're going to put like thermal resist on for your engineering, pretty much you're always going to run reinforced on a combat ship. If you're an exploration or a trading ship, well, trading ships I run reinforced usually too. If you're a exploration ship, you might consider enhanced low power, because not only will it increase your shields, but it will also decrease the amount of power and the amount of weight of the generator, which is really nice. So keep that in mind. Experimentals for biweave, because we're going with that really high recharge shield, then I definitely recommend fast charge, which will add some regen. If you're going with something that has like no regen, like a prismatic or even the big A grade, then you might want to go with high cap, which just basically increases the amount of the shield. And this area has your shield hit points. You're able to play around with that. And when we talk about utilities, your boosters that you use, your shield boosters, are going to make a huge difference. Okay. So pretty much for any combat vessel, reinforced, fast charge for biweave, high cap for normal shields is pretty much the way to go. Okay. Moving on, something that's really popular you should learn how to use are shield cell banks. There's a hotkey in your controls specifically for shield cell banks. You should bind them to a key. Don't use them in a fire group. I always say that over and over. Bind it to a specific key that you're able to hit for your shield cell bank. So what a shield cell bank does is it will spin up for a certain spin up time and generate heat, which will kind of overheat you. And then once it's done spinning up, it will release energy into your shield. Now, if your shield's already broken, that's not going to do you any good. But if your shield's just low on energy, it will recharge some of your shield for the values that it says. There's different grades. You can go with an A or a B. The B gets an extra charge, but it doesn't quite heal for as much as the A. And also the B is more heavy, so that's something to consider. But the extra charge, which means you're getting a higher total of refills, is really good. For engineering, there's kind of 2 different ways to go. For PvP, a lot of people like to run rapid charge recycling cell. And the reason for that is because it reduces your spin up time. And why that's good is because there's weapons out there like railguns that get feedback cascade, and those will interrupt your spin up. So the shorter your spin up, the more heat you're going to get. You're going to get heat faster, but you're less likely to get interrupted. If you're running something like a PvE Corvette, then a lot of the time it's good to go with like specialized. And then boss cells is the one I recommend for running. And that's kind of a PvE thing. It basically makes the spin up time longer, which means you're taking less heat per second. So your ship will dissipate more. And then you also end up getting more total energy back into your shield. So it just works out to be a lot better for PvE. So that's kind of shield cell banks in a nutshell. Hull reinforcement, another thing that you're going to want a whole bunch of is to reinforce your hull. And those add on to your hit points. And usually you're going to want to run heavy duty deep plating. because that's going to not only give you a whole bunch of hull, but it's also going to give you a bunch of your resist that everybody's worried about. Now, keep in mind, these resists are soft capped at 30%. So at 30%, about 30%, you start getting diminishing returns for resist. So resist becomes kind of less important. And really what you want to look at are these whole hit point numbers and make choices that give you the most numbers. So whole bunch of hull reinforcements, all heavy duty deep plating. But sometimes if you're worried about thermal damage, then which the reactive has great resist except for the thermal, sometimes people will do a thermal resistant uh, hull reinforcement. Now, the idea is that you do that on your smallest possible hull reinforcement. And the reason for that is because you're losing the least amount of hull that way. So instead of doing heavy duty on a big one, you know, like if you were to put thermal resist, you'd be losing a whole bunch of hull. And you don't want to do that. This is kind of optional. If you actually look at the numbers and we swap this over to heavy duty and then deep plating, we lose about 1,000 thermal, but we pick up quite a lot of explosive and kinetic. So that puts us at 6673 and 6830. Let's switch it back and see where we were at. As opposed to 57. So you got to find the right balance of what works for you. You could go just straight up heavy duty deep plating on all of these, and it wouldn't be a bad answer. This particular build, I chose to go thermal resist with deep plating because when you work through the numbers, that just gave me the numbers that I like the best. A lot of the time I like to chart this stuff on Excel. So basically put in the option, take down the numbers, put them in Excel, and then you can make a nice little chart with those values. I do the same thing for shield boosters, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And that's hull reinforcements. Another module that you're going to want to take on combat ship is module reinforcements. So modules basically protect your core modules, you know, and your shields and things like that. So instead, like if somebody's targeting your power plant, instead of your power plant taking all the damage, 60% of it is going to go to this module, and then 60% of the remaining damage is going to go to that module. Okay, so that's actually a pretty good, pretty good coverage. And these will continue to work until all of your integrity is used up. Also, there are regular module reinforcements, and then there are Guardian module reinforcements. And the difference in that is that the Guardian module reinforcements have a little bit more integrity, but they use a little bit of power. So if you come down here, we can see our power, and this is where it gets into sizing your power plant. You want to make sure that you have enough power to run things. And sometimes, you know, you have to turn off your cargo hatch so that it doesn't include that power and things like that. I don't like to build ships that have small margin on power for combat, because when your power plant starts taking damage, you lose power generation. So you always want to have on a combat ship some buffer. Just my opinion. So that's kind of module reinforcements. They're very important. There's also some other things you can do, like an interdictor to pull people out of supercruise, fuel scoops, you know, things like that. Just build whatever you need for the ship. The nice thing about the Crate Mark II is it has a really nice gas tank, and it has a serviceable jump range. So you really don't have to run a fuel scoop or anything if you're just jumping around like EDF space. It's pretty nice. I'm going to skip weapons for now. Let's talk about utilities. So in utilities, you get a lot of good stuff like shield boosters, heat sinks, chaff. So for this particular build, I like to run a chaff launcher because a lot of people are running gimbaled weapons these days, and a chaff launcher will totally screw somebody that's running gimbaled weapons. And I like to put an extra ammo on that. And then the rest are all shield boosters. Shield boosters will increase the amount of my shields. And I've done a lot of experimentation with these, whether you run thermal resistance or resist augmented, heavy duty, things like that. So for this particular build, I like to run 2 resist augmented boosters, grade A boosters with supercapacitors, because I feel that gives me the best overall shield. Another good configuration is running maybe 1 thermal resist booster with supercapacitor, and then 2 heavy duty boosters with supercapacitors. You just have to play around with it. I like to make graphs that show all these numbers for the different configurations, and then because a lot of the time what you'll find is that you might be sacrificing 100 thermal, but you're gaining a couple hundred absolute, or and then you're gaining 500 explosive or things like that. So you have to really decide what's important to you, and I would say absolute is the most important because so many people use plasmas. Thermal, isn't the most important thing to me, to be honest. So that's kind of how I like to design my shield. And boosters use a lot of power. So again, pay attention to your power and pay attention to your power plant, right? Okay. If you're a Corvette or a Cutter and you've got like 7 shield boosters with a big prismatic shield, that's going to use a lot of power. Okay, so that's where you might have to go overcharged. You might have to go monstered. Yeah, so keep that in mind. That's why I always design the power plant last. Weapons is kind of a plethora. You've got fixed weapons, which are fixed to the front of your ship, so you basically aim by steering. You've got gimbaled weapons, which shoot forwards. However, they have some adjustability to auto-track your target, which is really nice. And then you have turrets, which can shoot in any directions on that side of your ship. So one of the things you want to keep in mind when you're designing your weapons is the placement on the actual ship, which obviously you can't see that in Coriolis. You have to look that up in the game, but it'll show you, is it on the top? Is it on the bottom? On this ship, it's not terribly important, but on an Anaconda, or a Corvette, knowing where those hard points are and how you're going to use them is very important. So something to think about. And then, there's a plethora of types of weapon engineering and types of weapons. You got frag cannons, you've got plasmas. I mean, really, you just need to play with them and see what you like, what you don't like. I run different weapons for PvP than I do for PvE typically. PvE, I like to use some gimbaled beam lasers and some gimbaled multi-cannons. PvP, I typically use like rail guns and fixed frags or fixed plasmas. So it really varies. So keep that in mind. And also, keep your power in mind. And then another thing also is you can come down here to offense and you can put pips in weapons, and it'll tell you how long you have until your weapons drain, depending on how many pips you have in your weapons. So with 1 pip in weapons, my weapons will drain in 14 seconds, assuming that I'm firing all 5 of them. A way that you can come in here and disable, like let's say I don't want to look at the railguns, I just want to look at the frag cannons. So with 1 pip in weapons, they'll never drain shooting the. Oh, that's why I love frag cannons. So keep that in mind when you're building things, especially if you're doing laser builds, because how you engineer your power distributor, which by the way should almost always be charge enhanced super conduits, unless it's an exploration ship where you should just be engine focused super conduits. That's pretty much how you should do it always. There's very few situations when you'd want something else. Maybe on an explorer ship you might want stripped down instead of super conduits. But anyhow, getting off topic. So this is a great spot where you can see your DPS, you can see your power management for your distributor. Just don't forget to come back in here and turn the weapons back on. Okay. One thing that I'll typically do when I'm building the ship is if I have an interdictor, I'll turn that off because I put it in the 5th power priority. So even if I am low on power, as soon as I deploy my hard points, it disables the interdictor because you only need it in Super Cruise, right? You're not actually going to use it when you're using your weapons. You can do the same with Fuel Scoop. Set that for 5. Your cargo hatch, unless you're scooping stuff or something, you can set for 5. Turn that off. I mean, look at all this power we have. That's one thing I love about the crate is this size 7 power plant. Oh, so great for medium ship. All right, so that's kind of how I design ships in Coriolis. If you come up here, we could run through quick little explorer build. So exploration ship, we could go lightweight, heavy duty, deep plating. Again, there's no weight because lightweight is 0 weight. Power plant, save that for last. Thrusters, you know what? I like A thrusters, and I'm going to go dirty drives. Sometimes you might do drag drives or drive distributors, depending on which one gives you the best boost speed. Frame shift drive, we definitely need an A grade, increased range with mass manager, life support. Let's go D grade, and then we're going to go lightweight. And then power distributor, I wonder if we could get away with running a 2. Let's try running a 2. So we go 2, we could do engine focused, and then maybe we'll strip it down. Well, strip down only gives you 0.1. Maybe we'll do super conduits. Yeah, here we go. Here's a size 2 distributor. Sensors, do a D, lightweight. Gas tank, leave that. We're going to get rid of all this other stuff. Size 6, I like fuel scoop. Size 5, let's do a Guardian frame shift drive booster. Oh yeah. Not getting it to come up here. Here we go. Boom. And then how about a shield? I might do a 3D shield generator because these are the lightest. Oh, we're getting low on power here. I'm just going to put an A in for now. Enhanced low power, and we'll strip it down. So now our shield weighs 0.9 tons. Other things, maybe you go with an AFMU. And then maybe a planetary vehicle bay. 2G, because they're lighter, although they use more power. We're going to take a look at that. Surface scanner. Then what else do we need for this last slot? I don't know. I don't know what we really need. Hard points, don't really need any weapons. Utility mounts. This is exploration ship. Some people like to bring a heat sink. Maybe lightweight. Okay. So far we're at, let's see here, 62 light year jump range. That's pretty awesome. 437 light years without scooping. Wow. Okay. See how putting a little bit of deep plating on this gave us some more hull? Like without the deep plating, it's basically almost doubling our hull putting heavy duty deep plating on this. So that's nice when you crash, trust me. Okay, so now let's look at how much power we have. Now these auto field maintenance units, you only have to turn those on if you're actually using them. So let's get rid of those. Your cargo hatch, we don't actually need that because we're not cargo hatching anything. And also this planetary vehicle hangar, you can move it to like a 4th priority. These ones, move them to 5. And this is a lot of power we just freed up because you only need this if you're actually landed on the planet, right? So, okay. Another thing that you could do, these E boosters, shields booster with E with engineering on them are actually really good. The 0E shield booster with grade 5 heavy duty with supercapacitors gives you a 50% boost in shield for 2 tons. Whereas I think the other one weighs 14.5 tons. So that's pretty awesome. Just keep that in mind. So here you go. Here's a quick little exploration ship that we built. You could bring another planetary vehicle if you wanted to, or a cargo bay or something. So last but not least, we said we were going to make our power plant. So I am definitely going to go way small. In fact, even though this is red, we could try a 3A, And then maybe we'll just throw a couple overcharges on it. Bad thing about armored is that it adds weight, so we don't really want to do that. So maybe a little overcharged, maybe some stripped down. And yeah, we're able to use size 3. Actually, we still got lots of power. I wonder if I could go smaller. Maybe I could go with a 2. I might have to go a little higher. Grade 5? Ooh. Strip down. So here we have a 2-way power plant, grade 5. And shrinking that down picked us up another light year of jump, almost 2 light years of jump. So now we're at almost 64. So it's pretty cool how you can sit and engineer this on Coriolis and then just go build it. All right, well, anyhow, if you guys have any questions, hit me up on Discord. You know where to find me. Bye.